Okay. Good morning to everyone, or good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. Today, I would like to present a joint study between trope theory and bundle theory. Before starting, just start with an overview about the definition of tropes using William's word. A trope is the occurrence of an instance, and it is a particular and abstract entity. However, there is disagreement about the identification of the nature of tropes. Some philosophers, including Williams himself, consider tropes as objects, and other philosophers consider them as properties. I hold the latter view, and then I consider tropes as properties, albeit of a particular kind. And so I hold that the proper way to refer to tropes is through through expressions such the Y trope of the object X. The trope theory is the view that reality is made up wholly or partially of tropes, and for this reason, Williams defines them as the alphabet of being. However, this alphabet lacks a grammar, so the aim of my work is to lay the foundation of a grammar for tropes, which will depend on what theories one is prepared to accept beyond the theory that trope exists. And the main theory I adapted is the bundle theory, namely that objects are nothing but a bundle of tropes. So my goal is to provide a grammar of trope theory capable for addressing some of the classical problem for a bundle of theory. The trope theory is opposed to the universal theory of properties, and it offers an interesting and superlative discussion solution to the problem of one of their many. Properties were considered for centuries as universal, namely they were considered as starting from Plato, we call them ideas, obviously, were considered as general abstract entities capable of being present simultaneously in two or more distinct entities. Instead, in 1953, William proposes another type of property that were previously intuited in a primordial form by other philosophers, for example, like Aristotle, Locke, Spinoza, Leibniz, and called them for the first time as tropes. To clarify the differences between universal and trope theory, let's just consider this simple example. There are two red apples, A and B. For a theory of universals, we have two different states of affairs, which are A is red and B is red. The two states of affairs are similar because they both have as a constituent the universal redness, but they are still different because the former has as a constituent of itself the material substratum A, and the second has a constituent the material substratum B. So the two states of affairs have something in common, which is the universal redness, but they are still different because they have two different material substratum. On the other hand, for the trope theory, we have two different states of affairs, which are A is red and B is red. But A has a constituent of itself, the red trope A, and B has a constituent of itself, the red trope B. So in the second case, we have two distinct tropes, even if they are exactly similar to each other, but they are still two different entities. However, although the trope theory is opposed to the universal theory of properties, there is a link between tropes and universals. The first link between them is that tropes are collected into universals. Indeed, Williams calls them the particular instance of their universal, which are constituted by tropes, which are less defined than its components, and which are not instantiated by particulars. These links are really important for the theory of trope because they explain the similarity between two numerical distinct tropes without the need to hypothesize the trope of similarity. Indeed, if we hypothesize a trope of similarity between similar tropes, we will fall in a vicious regress. And the second reason is that using harmonious words, we need a universal to hold the word together and to address in a proper way the problem of induction. Indeed, if there were any universal, we could not explain why two numerical distinct entities are exactly similar to each other or just similar to each other. Nevertheless, trope theory has some advantages over universals, which are that it dispenses with the existence of ontologically mysterious entities such universal that are actualized in an unknown way in existing objects. It dispenses also with both the existence of substrata, which having to be nude entails a series of difficulties. Indeed, to be nude means to be independent of every property, and so a substratum theorist must accept that he cannot explain what a substratum is, how it's made, he cannot perceive it, and the second problem is that every substratum must have at least one property, which is the property of being nude, and has some categorical properties, for example, being a bearer of attribute, being a particular, and so it cannot be as nude as the theory wants. Accepting the bundle theory and the trope theory, we can adapt a one-category ontology, and so it is an occurrence theory. And then the main advantages are for epistemological reasons. Indeed, it seems that we perceive the qualities of a specific things. For example, I perceive the weight of the object I hold in my hand and not the weight in general. And then tropes can be used to explain some casual events. For example, it is not a wall stove that burns you, but you are burned by the temperature of the stove, and the red mark is not left by the temperature in general, but is left by the temperature of the particular stove now. Okay, so the trope theory seems to be as noted above, promising the greatest parsimony in ontology, because it is based with both universal and substratum, and it adopts only the existence of tropes. However, second-level Yekaterinburg relations between tropes prove necessary for the theory, and the theory has two primitive relations. The first one is the relation of exact resemblance. As so above, tropes are held together in the same universal through the relation of exact resemblance, which is an equivalence relation. This means that it is reflexive, A resembles A, it is symmetric, if A resembles B, then B resembles A, and it is transitive. It means that if A resembles B and B resembles C, then A resembles C. The second relation is the relation of compresence. Objects are a bundle of tropes which are held together through the relation of compresence, which is the corresponding relation of the relation of instantiation between tropes and particulars in a substratum theory. And I take to be a quasi-order relation, which means that it is symmetric, except for some cases, which is if A is compresent to B, then B is compresent to A. And it is transitive, which means that if A is compresent to B and B is compresent to C, then A is compresent to C. It is a really important relation because the concrete particular is something more the mere aggregate of its components. Otherwise, as soon as the components, namely the tropes of a concrete particular exist, then so it does, which is an untenable position. So I propose to consider a concrete particular as a bundle of its components plus the relation of compresence. And my proposal is to state the laws of composition in terms of the relation of compresence, which means that if A composed B, then A is compresent to C. But as Fuhrman highlights, not every pair of distinct particular can be compresent, and the composition fails for two cases. The first one is for incompatible particulars, and the second one is that if A is an individual, then A is maximally determined. So it cannot compose into a more determined individual. This means that if A is an instantiated trope, it is maximally determinate, which means that it can compose with another trope B, which in turn is a maximally determinate trope, but it cannot compose with a trope exactly similar to itself. Indeed, it's not economical that this situation can occur because the composition and the compresence of two exactly similar tropes will not add any property nor to the trope, since it is maximally determinate, neither to the object itself. So the symmetry holds if and only if A and B belongs to two different classes of resemblance, and the transitivity holds if A, B, and C holds to three different classes of resemblance. However, this seems insufficient. Let us consider this example. If we have three tropes, the soft trope, the round trope, and a hard trope, which belong to three different classes of resemblance, thanks to the transitivity, we can argue that if the soft trope is compressed to the round trope and the round trope is compressed to the hard trope, then the soft trope is compressed to the hard trope, which seems an illogical position for our metaphysical possible world. So my proposal is to consider the determinable determinate relation of properties as relevant for the laws of composition of an individual as well. All the classes of resemblance are the determinates. They are made up of the union of ultimate determinates, which are in turn the union of similar tropes. Also, the classes of resemblance can be grouped, and their union generates the determinable. Visually, the tree is arranged like this image. And to clarify, we can consider an example. If we unify all the scarlet tropes, all the magenta tropes, or the navy blue tropes and the sky blue tropes, we get the ultimate determinate. We can unify the ultimate determinate belonging to the same shade of the same color, and we get the determinate. In this case, we have the red trope and the blue trope, which are the universals. Also, the determinate can be unified, and their union generates the determinable, which in this case is the color trope. And my proposal is to consider that the comparisons can be held only between classes of resemblance, which is determinate, which lay in different level of the same determinal determinate tree. In this way, we won't have into the same bundle neither a magenta trope and a scarlet trope, nor a dark trope and a soft trope. Exactly, it was I was saying. Okay, now we can move to the second problem I analyzed in this presentation, which is the internal coherence of a bundle of trope. Indeed, some trope theorists believe that bundle of trope, a chain of tropes, or a set of tropes has too little internal coherence and the unity to be qualified as an individual. So we need to find what Merz calls the glue of being. And my proposal is to consider as relevant the nucleus-Simons theory. Simons believes that into the same bundle of tropes, there are essential tropes and accidental tropes. Essential tropes are all constitute the nucleus of the bundle. And my proposal is to consider this nucleus as the ground floor of the bundle itself, and it is fundamental both for the individual's identities and the very existence of the individual. If the essential properties do not conform a complete substance, they will need the accidental tropes, whose set is called also by Simons the halo of the object. The great advantage of the nucleus theory lies precisely in the distinction between the essential and the accidental tropes. And as we had above, the identity of the individual rigidly depends on the compresence of the essential tropes present in the nucleus. However, tropes are particular properties whose existence depends on being part of some bundle. Here it seems that the whole, namely the bundle, depends on its part, and that the parts, namely the tropes, depend on the whole. So it seems that we are forced to accept a case of symmetric ontological dependence. However, as we saw, the bundle rigidly depends on the essential tropes of the nucleus. Instead, the dependence of the tropes on the bundle is generic, which means that the tropes depend on being part of some bundle or being actualized by some individual, but they generic depend on which bundle they belong or in which bundle they are, on which object they are actualized. Usually the main difference is this one. So an object is essentially such that it exists only if the tropes of the nucleus exist, and a trope necessitates the existence of an object on which it can inhere, but it does not depend on the specific object on which it accidentally is present. So this thin difference between the two kinds of dependence can allowed us to preserve the asymmetry of dependence. Now I move to the third and final problem for the bundle theory, namely the change of tropes. Indeed, an object, is nothing but a bundle of trope, and a change in a substance consists in the replacement of one trope by another. So we should ask whether the identity of the object persists and what happened to the trope when he is replaced. The question seems to have at least 3 resolution options. The first one is that we treat the object after the change of one or more of its properties as if it were the same object as the one before the change, but it changes at every change of its properties. The second resolution option is that all the properties that an object changes during its lifetimes are present from the beginning of the object existence, with some of them present in a kind of quinage manner, and the others that prevail on the former. And the third resolution is that we admit that the same object can actualize some properties at the time t and others at the time t1. However, the first option faces the same problem that presentism faces. For example, let's consider we go to a trip and we buy as a souvenir a pencil. Once back to the office, we start using our pencil, and at very usage, it becomes dirtier. It needs to be sharpened. As a consequence, it became shorter and shorter. But yet, we are pretty sure that that pencil is the same pencil we have bought during our trip. The main problem is that this position does not consider that material objects are variously qualified entities, which means that they are constituted by multiple and changing properties. The second try is against the clause that we previously proposed. Indeed, there cannot be two or more compresent tropes belonging to the same level of the same determinable determinatrix, even if some of them are in a quiescent way. So we adopt the third resolution option, which is that an object can manifest some properties at t0, others at t1, and others again at tn without losing its identity. At this point, we should explain what happens to the trope when the bundle changes, and how can the identity of the bundle endure. About the trope, all the properties described in a trope theory are always time indexed. So tropes belongs to being part of a present bundle spatio-temporary object, and so in the very moment that an object stops to actualize a trope, the trope stops its existence. About the bundle, since the identity of the bundle rigidly depends on the essential tropes of the nucleus, we can hold that what changes are the accidental tropes of the objects, the object, leaving the components of the nucleus intact, and as a consequence, the object's identity contact. Obviously, tropes that constitute the nucleus may change too, and this changes as a consequence the change of the individual's identity, and it's a really important point since it's also fundamental for considering the case of destruction of an individual. Indeed, if there were any tropes or any essential tropes of the bundle, or if that tropes could not be changed, every object will be eternal. Just to conclude, the trope theory and the bundle theory are economical theories that can be valid substitute for the classical theory of a universal, but which need to be further discussed. And this is just the beginning of my research project. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Rachele, so much for your talk. Any questions from the audience? So, Frederica, do you want to ask a question? Well, it seems that Frederica didn't mute her micro. Okay, so any questions? So remember that you may also post a question in a chat, and I will read it. Okay, Leah writes that he needs a moment to post a question. Okay, so while I think Ilya is writing and typing, I don't see any other participants who wants to ask a question. I will slightly abuse my position as moderator today, and I will start asking my question. So I wanted to ask you mostly about the third type of resolution. You said that you prefer to the problem of identity. So if so tell me please if I correctly understood it. So if we say that an object or an individual might change might change the tropes during the time and different periods of time, does it mean that it should only be accidental tropes if we accept this distinction in the nucleus theory between essential tropes and accidental tropes? Because as far
Yes,
as I
sorry,
understood,
probably I was not clear enough. Yes, my proposal is to consider that that a bundle of tropes can change only accidental tropes to preserve its identity. While if we affect the essential tropes on the nucleus, obviously also the identity of the bundle change, since the identity of the bundle depends rigidly on the presence of essential tropes in the nucleus.
yeah, okay, thank you. And one question more, also regarding essential tropes. Are they the same tropes for all entities, or it depends on the kind of entity we have? So do these essential tropes need to be the same tropes for any kind of objects in the universe?
Yeah, I will say that the essential tropes depends on the kind of the material object we are considering, but the grain question remains which tropes are essential for every object. For example, which is the essential tropes for being a person, and this is the one of the most important question of the philosophy. So yeah, the problem is that to individualize the essential tropes of every object. And for some objects, it's easier. For a person, it's harder.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I see that Ilya finally typed his question. Okay, so I will read it. So can you clarify the distinction between essential tropes and other tropes? Is this distinction analogous to the difference between necessity and contingency in model metaphysics and or model logic?
Exactly, I would say yes. It's the same difference in modal logic. So the essential tropes are something that on which the identity of an object depends, while the accidental tropes are something on which the identity of the object does not depend. So they are just contingent properties present to complete the properties of the object, but on which the identity does not depend. I don't know if I replied.
Okay, let's see what Ilya is typing here. Does this answer your question, Ilya? Okay, Ilya has some kind of a clarifying question. He asks, but in a model context, we've got models. Is there something similar in trope context?
It's not an aspect I have considered. I won't say no.
Yeah, okay. So Ilya, once again, does it answer your question? You have something to ask more? Okay, we need to wait a little bit. Oh, yeah, he typed that he accidentally found the answer to his next question by himself and says thank you. Okay. Yeah, so does anyone have questions? No, it looks like no one wants to ask the question. So if I think, well, the time allows us for one more question. So I will also wanted to ask you about the relation of compressants, yeah, about which you told at the first part of your talk. And also I want to ask this question regarding the distinction between essential and accidental tropes. This relation of compressants is the same for both types of tropes. I mean, accidental and essential, or this is only for essential tropes?
No, it's the same relation both for essential and to accidental tropes, and the accidental tropes must be comprised in the halo, as Simons called it, while the essential trope must be comprised in the nucleus, and then there's a compresence relation between the nucleus and the halo. But it's pretty the same. So the laws of compresence are exactly the same between all the kind of tropes in a bundle.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you. I got it. Thank you so much. So, well, other questions? Well, let's look at the chat. No, so it looks like we don't have more questions. So I think it's time to thank you for your talk. So let's say thank you for Rachele for her talk. I'm very happy that you're here, and thanks a lot for understanding with all this situation, which was yesterday.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I'm very glad that you were able to give your talk today.